This is Saturday Morning Mysteries.
And we're your hosts, Alexis and Grace.
Hello. Welcome back to Saturday Morning Mysteries bonus content Toon Tangents. We're your hosts, Grace and
Alexis.
And we're continuing.
Like, you just flew through that as like a prescription drug commercial.
Side effects include.
Side effects include.
Or like an auctioneer. Going once, going twice.
Yeah.
And so we're back to talk about continuing on our kind of mini Toon Tangent series where we talk about adult animated shows. Alexis is going to be talking about another one today that I'm so curious and slightly concerned about. She's been giving me a lot of like forewarnings about this one that I still don't know what it is. So
yeah,
I'm just going to cut straight to the chase and pass the tour because I'm
pass the torch.
I don't know what to think. I don't know what's happening.
I don't even know. Yeah, I'll just like really quickly tell the audience a little bit of what I told Grace that has her like clearly stressed out and concerned about what I'm about to talk about for the next 20 or so minutes here. One of the things I told her was that I actually, I was really on the fence about whether I wanted to include this show on my list. Not because I don't love the show. I have loved this show since it first aired in 2005. And even before that, the comic strip that this show was based off of. So it's not my love for the show that was at issue. It was more so the subject matter of the show and how, in my humble opinion, it is probably the edgiest, or maybe this only second only to like South Park, the edgiest adult animated show to ever air on TV. It's not, it wasn't direct to streaming because again, we're taking a little trip back to 2005 here.
Is it still on the air?
It is not still on the air, unfortunately. Maybe there's, maybe I'll get into how it may be in the future, but ultimately I think the show is done. It's over, but it's so good. You can now catch it on HBO Max because it originally aired on Cartoon Network on Adult Swim. As I said, came out in 2005, in November to be exact of 2005, ended in June 2014. What show am I talking about, friends and family?
Don't know. Oh, wait.
I'm talking about the Boondocks. you like realize like, oh shit, yeah. Should we stop recording? Should we end the episode before I take it any further?
No, so I've actually never watched it, but I know you love this show and I just put it together. I didn't know this was a comic strip.
It was. So yeah,
get into it.
Was in kind of similarly to like Calvin and Hobbes, actually. It was like a Sunday paper type of thing. And then I think they eventually did like graphic novels compiling like larger stories. Yeah. So if you're like me and Grace, at least, then your hometown newspaper probably ran some Boondocks comics, at least in the Sunday papers, if not just like in the daily comic section. So yeah, it was pretty popular comic that also got canceled after a while. The show faces a lot of cancellation, which was why I was hesitant to cover. It gets canceled. Well, I shouldn't say it gets canceled for a good reason, but the reasons why it got canceled definitely contribute to the factoring of it being the edgiest show to ever, I think the edgiest adult animated show, at least, to ever hit the airwaves. So let me introduce the show for people who are not familiar with it. And yes, I am straight up recommending this. I am sorry if you get uncomfortable while watching it, if you take me up on my recommendation, but I actually think it's probably one of the most important shows ever. It is a good thing. We should feel uncomfortable every now and again. Yeah. So the show first premiered on Adult Swim back in November of 2005, which fucking LOL. This is why I love Cartoon Network. To imagine that this show was on Cartoon Network, even though it was their late night programming block. Still though. It makes me so happy. And unfortunately, shortly after the show came out, Cartoon Network went downhill because they were like, okay, maybe this is a little too edgy for like something that kids may stay up late and accidentally be watching. But whatever. So it ended in 2014. And that probably sounds like a long run, like almost 9 years, but in all of that time, it actually only had 4 seasons. And
so it was like
I
on
wrote
and
it down.
off.
Yeah, 55 episodes total. So really not that much. And so they were spread out 2005, 2007, 2010, and 2014.
Oh, okay.
And the first and fourth seasons, let me tell you, were doozies to release. Again, the edginess and
got it.
Yeah, all of that. But I'll maybe get to that a little bit more later.
Yeah.
And so the show, what is this about? And like I said, it's based off a comic strip that is essentially about the same thing, but the show expands more on that story. It talks about the Freeman family, a dysfunctional Black trio, 2 boys and their grandfather, who have settled into the fictional but very friendly and honestly overall white and affluent suburb of Woodcrest. And the family is led by Robert Jebediah, aka Granddad Freeman. And he is the legal guardian of a 10-year-old Huey, who is essentially the family's like moral compass. He's very intelligent, super, very, very far left-leaning political ideology.
As a 10-year-old.
As a 10-year-old, social justice advocate and activist, and honestly, like very skilled, like with weapons and like at martial arts as well, again, as a 10-year-old.
Yep.
And then also there's Riley. He is the 8-year-old younger brother who's very rebellious and clever. He's like very into like hip hop culture and rapping, and he's actually very artistic. And he's just very mischievous, like always getting into trouble and like trying to smooth talk his way out of very, very tight situations. An 8-year-old, right? And also just showing like the kind of like the spectrum or the opposite, how opposite Huey and Riley are.
Riley, yeah.
But ultimately, it's a very, very loving, like tight-knit family, albeit, like I said, quite dysfunctional. And so after the unfortunate death of Huey and Riley's parents, Granddad, he uses the inheritance money actually to move this family out of the city, which there's an argument over whether it's Chicago, Illinois, or Columbia, Maryland, both 2 cities that are like pretty affluent in terms of the Black community. But anyway, so Granddad moves them from the city and into the even more affluent suburbs. And so I will note that a reboot of the show was announced back in June of 2019, and it was supposed to premiere.
Got me excited.
Sorry. Yep. It was supposed to come out in 2022, which would have been amazing because this show does a very good job of combining current events into the stories and satirizing them, parodying them, whatever.
Yeah. Making it satirical.
Exactly. Thank you. And so thinking about all the stuff going on in 2022, that would have been great for like all of the comedic relief that we needed. But unfortunately, in February of 2022, this year, it was announced that the project was canceled. So also I will add that the man who voiced Granddad, he actually passed away in 2019, sadly, John Witherspoon, who so sad. He was a legend. But anyway, so 3 big reasons why I love this show. One,
and, sorry, really quick.
Go for it.
It just like follows the family, like in like the day to day, like it follows the Freemans. Okay.
Yes. So, and I'll get right to that. So the 3 big reasons, it's like pure satire. The show pulls no punches. And also the animation and music overall is like straight up from the gods, which I'll get to that later. We'll get to that. So pure satire though. So the show, it essentially is covering like a number of just absolutely wild shenanigans, business or attempted business ventures, and like overall mishaps at
by the children
family. The children and Granddad, ultimately, and their neighbors.
Business.
Yeah, in some cases, or they try to, or at least enterprises of some sort, perhaps criminal enterprises in some way.
Still an entrepreneur.
Yeah, exactly. And the story, it involves like a lot of their neighbors and other community members in the city or this town of Woodcrest. And so it just really talks about the Freemans getting into their own shenanigans, but also being roped into their community's shenanigans as well. And so that, keeping in mind what I said before about them moving from like the like urban, more dense city into this like super white affluent suburb, the show is really ultimately about them adjusting to this new high class lifestyle. Like when I say they lean into it, like they buy a McMansion, straight up beautiful house. Granddad becomes essentially like really good friends with the richest man in town. Ed Wunsler Sr., I believe is his name. He owns like every bank, every restaurant, every store, every house essentially therefore in town. And he like instantly takes a liking for Granddad. But the show thus provides like a very, very stinging commentary on like the wealth divide, socio-political issues in America. And like it really uses the concept of clashing cultures and class stereotypes to like drive home really make these points. So like, for example, at one point in the very first episode, just like as a quick little example, Granddad, he recalls, because, he's an older fellow, so he was alive during the civil rights movement in the like 50s and 60s. And he recalls attending a protest at one point and being harassed by his other fellow protesters because Granddad, he decided it would be a good idea to wear like a rain jacket and a bucket hat so that if the police started hosing them, he would at least stay dry.
Oh my God.
And the other protesters are like, nah, man, you need to get out of here with that. Like, we're here really trying to fight. And Granddad's like, well, I wish you, and then they get sprayed by a hose and Granddad's like, well, I bet you wish you had your coat now, did you? Oh, yeah.
He's just standing there.
In this flashback, yeah. And so naturally, the show had a bit of protest from modern day civil rights leaders who saw that and took offense, like Al Sharpton. But what do we always say? Uncomfortable topics. Sometimes the best way to cope is just to laugh and turn them into funny situations. On top of all of these just very topical jokes about not just the civil rights movement, but like modern race relations in America. And again, like the economic divide, like the difference between the poor and the rich, and how the wealthy view the poor and assume so many things about the poor. There's also a lot of funny parodied celebrity versions of themselves. So like Tyler Perry is the subject of one episode.
Oh my God.
Perhaps is shat on quite a bit. Oprah Winfrey has an episode where two of the supporting characters in the show, these two white former, I think, is it the Iraq War or Afghanistan? They're vets from one of those wars. But one of them, he's like the son of Ed Wunsler, and he's, one of the richest guys in town. Funny enough, these two white guys are voiced by Samuel L. Jackson and Charlie Murphy, aka the brother of Eddie Murphy.
Wait, just like generally of like casting, incredible, but also very funny.
What hilarious, because it's two white guys, and then you hear Sam Jackson's voice come out, and it's so funny. But yeah, so they make a plot to kidnap Oprah because they're like bored. Essentially, these two rich kids are bored, and they like rope Riley into the plan, who's like excited to help them out. So that's like the kind of humor just in like the first couple of episodes. And then, like I said before, the show pulls no punches, which I already kind of alluded to. They are quick to kind of joke about the civil rights movement. Obviously, a very, very important and pivotal moment in American history. Not here to question that whatsoever in the show. I think it helps you learn about these issues in a different light. Right. So it's an animation show and it's fictionalized, but it really does help you kind of look at what other views from what is typically seen as a monolithic kind of ideology may have been on the civil rights movement. Like, yes, obviously, I'm pretty sure all Black people wanted the civil rights movement to happen, but there were varying levels of involvement. And it's just interesting to see their take on how different people were trying to deal with things at that time, given like the reality of trying to overhaul a political system in a matter of just a few years. And so, like I said, the show pulls no punches, the tiny things. And so the show pulls no punches and, kind of addressing Granddad's memories of his involvement in the civil rights movement. Huey, the 10-year-old son, as I said before, is very, very far left politically leaning, and he is always trying to essentially stir up the emotions of people in this wealthy community by calling out like the war on terrorism, the war on poverty, the war on drugs, and just, even going into other Black communities and saying like BET is terrible. Like he goes on a hunger strike until BET promises Black Entertainment Television, which is a TV station. He's like, I'm going on a hunger strike until BET actually puts content that's like that positively portrays the Black experience on the air, which I will add, BET tried to sue for, I think it was like defamation. Or Viacom like threatened to like sue if they didn't like pool the episode, or like if they did air that episode. Cartoon Network was like, now we're definitely gonna.
Yeah, now they're like, no, and we're gonna publish the letters your lawyers
They delayed the release, I think. But after watching it, I'm like, oh shit, yeah, I definitely see why BET and Viacom wanted to sue them for this. But yeah, so like they do not mince words. They call people out directly. If it wasn't animated, then it would probably be very ripe for a defamation lawsuit. But since it's a cartoon, they can write it off as a parody. And yeah, all of these reasons, like this is why the first season took a long time for the studio to actually like get it right, because I should say Aaron Magruder is the name of the guy who writes and produces the show, at least the first 3 seasons, and he also created the comic book series. So they had a rough time working with his scripts and his storylines, because they were like, we can't quite put this on TV. It was originally supposed to air on Fox. And they were like, you need to like dumb this down to like the Family Guy level. This is a little too topical. So, that deal, the Fox deal eventually fell through. And again, why I fucks with Cartoon Network, or at least back then I did.
Yep.
Adult Swim, they came across the script somehow. Yeah. And they were like, oh, bring these guys in. And they were like, you know what? Just tell the stories. Like, I'm not here to mute you. I'm not here to censor you. It's probably going to come on after 9 p.m. So you guys can say whatever you want.
Yeah, there's no rules after 9 p.m. on Cartoon Network.
Essentially, like, right? So, yeah. And from there, the show, well, I shouldn't say it took off, because again, it only had 4 seasons, but it became a huge, huge success, at least in the hearts of a lot of folks. And real quick, the third reason why I love this show, the animation and the music, it is from the gods. So I'm describing this, and if you've never watched it, then the last sort of animation style that you could probably imagine all of this going down in is anime. Is this
yeah,
style.
exactly.
You're probably like, oh, this is probably a fun, cute animation. It's an anime. Literally, Aaron Magruder is a huge anime fan, the creator of the show. So a lot of the background imagery, the music that's used, and the main, like the way that they draw the characters, it's based on classic anime shows like Samurai Champloo and like Cowboy Bebop. And there are so many others, whatever. But he essentially used straight up like Japanese and South Korean animation techniques. And I think they had a South Korean animation studio actually do the animation at some point. Yeah. So that's it's dope. Straight up like the fight scenes, which there are many, oddly enough, are like in that anime style where it like does the pan in on like the characters' faces. Yeah, it has like the jazzy hip hop music in the background and everything. And like I said before, Huey for some reason is great with weapons and martial arts. So he like will pull out like a samurai sword and start fighting Riley and whatnot. Yeah, exactly. Well, like those zoom ins and stuff, and the intense like kicks and landing shots. Yeah,
even if just like so yeah, I've probably never seen maybe a couple episodes, but like I mean, even just because like I can picture it in my head of even just like the moment to moment of like think of again of like really like big eyes, like emotive eyes,
big hair,
like, the
afros,
the day-to-day moments. Yeah, with it. But go on.
No, yeah, that's like super accurate. And just like the lankiness of the way characters are, it's like oddly they're muscular and lanky at the same time.
Yep.
Just yeah, if anyone has watched anime, then you understand what we're getting at with like the description of it, of these characters. But even if you haven't, just go check it out. You'll see, and then you'll be like, oh wow, this is a very unique take on adult animation that's not like straight up Japanese or Korean or anything like that. Yeah, so I'm skimming the surface here because I want people to watch it, not only because I think it says a lot of really, really important things and gets a lot of important messages across, like socio-politically and just culturally, but also because it is just very, very funny. But I will acknowledge the language is quite foul. It is bad. But I'm going to say, if we are warning you that a show has foul language, then be forewarned that it is very, very foul language, because we clearly are used to shows with that definitely are not PG or even PG-13 rated. The show is definitely a solid NC-17. And I'm just gonna say, our audience, you guys probably will get very uncomfortable watching it at some points, because it makes some very, very very strong points about race relations in particular in America, and the history of like the racial divide and the racial gap and the wealth gap and just poverty disparities and all of these things. It's like, and I know we're not going to get into politics here, but I will say, if you're anti-establishment, then you'll really like this. If you're anti-establishment and you're willing to hear some uncomfortable things, and you're definitely going to like this show. I won't get more into the politics than that, but it's definitely worth a watch. I wish it could have continued. I wish it didn't get canceled, but again, the very reason why it got canceled is honestly the reason why I love it so much. And I think it's just because it was so fucking edgy, and it made too many of the suits at the top floor of, the Warner Brothers or whatever, the Cartoon Network office building, a little too uncomfortable, or maybe like their friends were calling them like, hey, that one show was making fun of my company or whatever.
Right.
And so they were like, all right, we gotta shut this down. But totally worth the watch. Similarly to the last show that I talked about, BoJack Horseman, since it's over and done with, you don't have to feel like you're pressured to catch up with it to catch up with the show at a certain time. Go on HBO Max, find it on there, maybe watch a couple episodes to process. And I will say, even though it came out in 2005, the topics are still very, very relevant today.
Because America's still like super racist. So like,
even 20 years later, there's a lot of issues in that show covers that still have not been resolved, still are lingering over our heads. And I think that the way that they cover them in that show remains true today, even so many years later. So check it out. You will laugh. I don't think you'll cry, but you will definitely laugh. And you will definitely like
cry
sit
from
back
laughter?
And think. Yeah, you will cry from laughter.
Gotcha.
I do think so. But also I think you might have a new perspective on our nation a little bit after you check on the United States, I should say. I know we've got people listening in other countries too. And also, if you're from another country and you're listening to this, then check it out, because it actually will it'll give you a good look on how America unfortunately can sometimes be, but how there is a lot of promise definitely still, if we just do the right thing. I'll leave it at that.
I feel like, it sounds like, I know you mentioned the potential revival of it, but this is like a primed for exclusively streaming service type of thing, just because it's slightly less conglomerate maybe sometimes. And like, you can have a little more of that elbow room, I think, when it's just a streaming service to do whatever you want. So Netflix, if you're watching this,
I think it's Paramount now that owns them. Yeah, or someone, I forget who owns it now, but someone give the creators a call. Actually, I'm at the point now, if this was before John Witherspoon, the actor, had died, then I would say go for it. But at this point, unfortunately, I'm like, that guy, he's so iconic. I don't really think anyone else can voice. Yeah. So unfortunately, I think they just missed the opportunity. Like, if they ever rebooted it, I would definitely watch it. But at this point, I'm like,
you would know it.
I'm totally
exactly the same.
I'm fine with them not doing that, because even the 4th season, Aaron Magruder, he wasn't involved with it. He only did the first 3, and it's because it just became too difficult to hammer everything out. And so even in that, like it's still a really good season, but it's nowhere near as good as the first 3 because he wasn't involved with it. So it's like, if you change one piece of that equation, it just, so if I think he was supposed to do the reboot, though. The writer was supposed to come back for the reboot, but then John Witherspoon had passed away. So it's like, they just couldn't, well. But
yeah, which wasn't going to be.
Yeah, it's those 4 seasons on their own. I think it's enough. I mean, there could always be more, but yeah, I think it's
to have
good.
The same spark and magic.
Yes, it's good. I know, though, me and my brothers always used to say, like, man, especially around 2016, we were like, oh my God, if the Boondocks was out right now, it would literally be the best season ever. It would have been the best season. Which, my last little thing that I'll say here, shout out to my brothers. That's part of the reason why I love this show so much, is because the 3 of us used to watch this show together all of the time. Like, I'm pretty sure we had all 4 seasons on DVD, and we would just pop those shits in, rewatch, replay. And so I just have so many memories of us just joking around, like quoting that show out of context or whatever in random places in life, and people looking at us like,
they're like, it's okay, an 8-year-old said it.
It's okay. Yeah, right. Don't please don't call the cops on me. I swear I'm good. It was from a TV show. And then they look even more concerned.
It's like, no, I'm quoting a 10-year-old.
Yeah, it's good. Okay? It's good. No, he's not, but it's okay because he's really a cartoon, so it's fine.
So still.
Yeah, it's all good. So shout out to my brothers for getting me on that show. And awesome show. Go check it out, everyone. Again, HBO Max.
Yeah, very good recommendation. I need to go back and watch that, like, in full. And
I warned you guys. Trigger warning. I warned you.
Yeah, but again, like as we've said in the BoJack episode, as we've said multiple times, even today's episode, of like, hey, sometimes like sprinkling humor onto really hard topics is the way to get people there on them, and like invite people in to then like be like, okay, but here's the real sitch going on.
Exactly. So, here's the underlying story. Get past all the dark, depressing, very inappropriate aspects and actually nail down to the true topic. And I promise you will learn something, because even though they're cartoons, these shows definitely opened my eyes to some shit. Like, obviously it's a cartoon again, but just making you see things differently. It's I'll leave it at that, because I don't want to give too much away about these shows. Right.
Okay. I need to up that one to the top of the watch list. And HBO Max.
Yes.
All right. Good work. Cool. Good rec.
Thank you. Yeah, check it out, and drop some comments if you're familiar with the show. Tell me who your favorite character is. There are many prominent characters I didn't even mention here today, but tell us who your favorite character is. Maybe what your favorite episode is. If you haven't watched it, go check it out. Let us know what you think afterwards. And again, like I said with BoJack, don't come for my throat when it makes you feel ways, or when you get a little cringed out at some point.
Which, like, again, maybe that's the moment we need to step back and think about why we're uncomfortable in that scene, and maybe do some self-learning there and unpacking, rather than
let's normalize some of these
taking to the internet to yell about things, which is not productive at all.
Yes, not at all, or good for the health. But that's for another podcast to talk about. So thanks for tuning in, guys.
Thanks.
We'll see you next time.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in to Saturday Morning Mysteries.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share, rate, review, leave us a like, and drop a comment. We post episodes every Saturday and bonus Toon Tangents whenever we feel like it. So please subscribe so you don't miss the shenanigans.
And if you want to follow us on YouTube, click the bell under the YouTube subscribe button to receive notifications when new videos are posted.
And if you want to subscribe to the podcast, we have no idea what you're listening to us on. So just hit the big subscribe button on whatever app you're using. We believe in you.
Give us a follow on Twitter and Instagram at SatmornMist, all the abreves, and let us know if you have any episode or show requests by emailing SaturdayMorningMysteries@gmail.com.
Thanks to Jenna Kendall for the logo design and to Ava Sakiki for the music used during this week's episode.
See y'all groovy kids next week on Saturday Morning Mysteries.